Thank you all for coming to this open forum meeting tonight. The meeting we will afford the interested parties to explain their issues with the shelter. The tone of the issues will be professional and of a constructive nature. The purpose of the forum will attempt to understand the funding for the shelter, better understand the communication within the system, assist the volunteer efforts of the shelter and all the volunteer parties to provide the best care to the animals as possible, to raise awareness in the efforts to cut down the amount of animals euthanized each month, try to improve the communication in the community regarding the importance of spaying and neutering programs. And I will introduce the parties, and everybody can have 5 minutes to say who they are, who they represent, their issues, and then we'll have a 5-minute rebuttal or opportunity to talk about those issues. And we'll move forward. Then we're going to open it up to public comment over to the podium, over to my right, your left. Again, constructive issues only will be accepted and will be looked into. On my right, representing the animal shelter through the county is Deputy Judge Executive John Doug Hayes. On my left, representing the Pike County Humane Society, Benita Rose. We have members from the ASPCA here. We have members from Pike County Youth Leadership here, and I see Philip just walked in from the Diamonds in the Rough, which I guess is a new entity within the community that is forging an effort to help animals in distress or whatever it is that they're trying to do. So I will open it up to the judge, to go, Deputy Judge Executive to go first. John Doug.
Thank you, Jeff. And first, let me say that I'm here by virtue of my position in this administration as Deputy Judge Executive. I'm also a personnel director, but that has nothing to do with any issue here tonight. I want to begin by thanking you, Jeff Vanderbeck, and the News Express for making this opportunity available. I think public discourse of public issues is a wonderful thing, and thank you for advancing that. Let me first just advise everybody as to what the county's role is in this. KRS, Kentucky Revised Statute, the Law of Kentucky, 258.195 provides that the governing body of each county, now that's the fiscal court, shall employ, appoint, or contract with an animal control officer, or shall contract with an entity that employs, appoints, or contracts with an animal control officer, and shall establish and maintain an animal shelter as a means of facilitating and administering KRS 285.095 to 258.500. Now, it goes on, and there's several other provisions. In other words, counties can join together, and you can have a multi-county shelter. But it's pursuant to that statutory authority that Pike County has had and for many years now. And our county assistant county attorney and the fellow who advises the court is here, rolling case. And I asked him to come here for one reason. That's to just, if it needs be, to just briefly state the history of the animal shelter as it's been administered by the fiscal court over the years. The problems of today are not a whole lot different, unfortunately, than the problems that were there, Jeff, many years ago. And it's been ongoing. It's been something that many people have worked on and at to try to make it better. We're fortunate that through the efforts of the Pike County or the Humane Society here in the county and others who maybe weren't members but who generously contributed, that we were able to replace the old shelter building, which was up behind the sewage treatment plant, across the old Poly Bridge in that location, with a new building, which is down in Likens Creek. And so that's where we are and have been, I believe, since the summer of 2010. Also, Rick Henshaw is here, who's been our animal control officer, and Christian Henshaw is here, and she is the acting director of the animal shelter and has been since the retirement of the director, Rose Deskins. Now, having said all that, let me give you some indication of the kind of support, or some people may say non-support, that the animal shelter receives from the court. I asked our budget office, our chief financial officer, Rhonda James, to put together the total amount of the budget for the animal shelter for the last fiscal year. That would include all salaries. And before I give you that, let me say that we have down there now 5 employees, 4 of whom are full-time regular employees. We do not have a permanent director. We have an acting director and those 4 employees. And we have one position that we call temporary. That would be a 40-hour-week position, paid the 2H salary rate, but that gets no benefit. So in effect, we have 5 employees for that big animal shelter in this huge county. This county, Jeff, is 3/4 of the size of the state of Rhode Island. Someone said if you put a steamroller on it, it'd be bigger than the state of Texas. We're from an area whose people loves animals. There's no question about that. That's anecdotal. But we know that. Our people love animals, and they're pretty independent in their love of animals. They think that, like the Texans do, that there should be open range and that those animals should be allowed to roam. And a good part of our business down there is responding to citizens' complaints to go out and pick up animals roaming at large. And it's not just dogs, it's not just cats, it's everything. I think we had a complaint today of 2 horses up near, I can't remember where, but we've had in the last week or 2 a large hog that had to be shot that was chasing a 4-year-old girl. So we've done it all at the animal shelter, but we have a tremendous demand on that shelter and its 5 people with a budget. Now listen to this closely. $211,618. That's our budget. So we call on volunteers. We'd love to get volunteers. We can't operate without volunteers. We've had volunteers. The SPCA is currently volunteering. The Humane Society has volunteered. We've had individuals come down and volunteer. We must have that. No one here can say that I haven't taken the time over the years I've been in this office to discuss the issues. Most recently, we had a list of issues. I took them seriously. I went over them. Some were valid, some were not. And so, anyway, that's just an overview of the animal shelter, Jeff. I know you're indicating my time is up. I've got some statistics here from the year 2012, the year 2011 on the number of animals, but it is a large number of animals, and I need just to put this all in perspective.
We'll get to that in one second, I'm sure. And while we get through this thing, I'll have some questions as a follow-up, and I'll give you 30 seconds quickly to respond to each interested party. The first immediate question that comes to mind, or comment that I'm going to make and then follow it up with a question, is that the county is obviously in dire straits when it comes to funding for everything that there is. Insurance and cutting back salaries. I mean, if it's not a big secret that the county is lacking in funding for everything. So with that being said, the assumption is that because of that lack of funding, that places like the animal shelter will probably see a decrease. It's not going to see any increases anytime soon. And my question is that with the $211,000, are there any studies anywhere that can say, with that amount of funding, that the shelter's capacity on a per annum basis is X? Has there been any studies to show that?
I'm not aware of any, Jeff, but I can just tell you anecdotally again, that's by watching and listening, that we don't have enough people. We don't have enough full-time staff there. Really, we need 2 people out on the road. This county is so large. If our animal control officer is responding to a complaint in Pond Creek and we get one in Elkhorn City, and they're both emergencies, what do? We can't, sure. We need more people, we need more dollars.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'm going to open the mic up to Miss Benita Rose, who is coming to us, and she's going to be representing the Humane Society. Bonita, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, my statement is short, as I'd like to refer to that question about the formula you asked about. There is a formula about, it's based on how many animals come into a shelter every year. I don't have that right now, but it kind of gives you an idea of what's needed for basic care per animal based on how many animals come in per year. And I'm glad you've got the statistics, Judge, for past years, because we'd really like to have access to that so we'll know what kind of impact our spay-neuter program has had, and to know what the shelter really needs budget-wise. My name is Bonita Rose. I represent the Pike County Humane Society. Our organization has been active since 1981, and since 1981 we were saving money to build the shelter, and of course that's what we have now. Now our organization is concentrating its efforts on spaying and neutering, because we'd like to see the day when the animal shelter is maybe half empty instead of over full, the way it is now because of the overpopulation we have in this county. And we certainly encourage everyone to get their animals spayed or neutered, and if you need help, please call the Pike County Humane Society at 437-7992. Well, rather than go in through the litany of things that we think are wrong with what's going on at the shelter, I'll get to the core problem. The shelter is not being managed properly, and because of that, the public is not being served as it should, nor the animals in the shelter always being given adequate care. Thanks to the generosity and hard work of many people, we have a wonderful facility that we can all be proud of. It's a facility that will allow for good animal care and control, which is the responsibility of county government. Now it's up to county government to have in place the proper management of the facility and its program. Up till now, animal care and control has been a loosey-goosey affair, left to waddle along on its own as long as no one complained. This program is too important to the health and safety of Pike Countyans, as well as to the animals under its care, to be allowed to muddle along under mismanagement and neglect. The fiscal court cannot ignore it any longer. The shelter needs a written policy and procedures. I'll say it again, a written policy and procedures. Every animal shelter should have it. And it tells the employees what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to do it, when they're supposed to do it, how you deal with the public, and so forth. So there's, everything is laid out on paper. Anyway, that policy and procedure needs to be put in place, and when we need a manager who is willing and able to implement them satisfactorily. We're only asking for what any business or enterprise must have in order to accomplish its mission successfully. I guess that's all I have to say right now.
Bonita, as a follow-up to that, you mentioned in your statement that you feel that the shelter is not being managed properly. There's mismanagement and neglect, and I was wondering if you have any credible specifics that you can express right now that or examples of this alleged mismanagement and neglect and improper management of the shelter of that.
I think that was already listed in the article that we put in the paper. I mean, we can go on and on with complaints about this isn't being done right, that isn't being done right, equipment isn't being used correctly, I don't want this to go into just a big complaint list. I think we all agree that we do need better management at the shelter. And I think there has been, well, I hate to get into that because it sounds like it's going to turn into a fight.
Sure. No, we're not going to have any fighting going on tonight. All right, John Doug, quick question: Does the shelter have a policy at this point?
We have several policies, and I didn't bring them with me, but let me give you just one example. Sure. I did bring one because it was something that came up recently. We have an ongoing problem, Jeff, with the inmates that we use down there. I said we have 5 employees, but we have on a daily basis, assuming there's not a lockdown, we get 2 inmates from the Pike County Detention Center. I frankly don't know how we could operate without them. Now, there are 2 laborers down there that we don't have to pay for out of our budget. But there has always been a problem when you have inmates on work release by a few bad apples who spoil the whole barrel. And that is those who want to bring contraband drugs into the Pike County Detention Center from outside. And Jeff, the problem is you've got these inmates working around the public. You can't restrict the public. And so the public comes into the shelter. Somebody says, we want to see a dog. We're interested in adopting a dog or a cat or whatever. And if that person is working with the inmate, and they're able to get near them, there's a possibility for exchange of drugs. Just recently, our personnel found some contraband under one of the garbage bins. Now, that's obviously been a prearranged thing. But I'm trying to answer this very quickly, but it's a complicated situation. So what I've done is instituted a 7-step policy and a memorandum inmate work release policy that the director has gotten, and the whole policy is designed to keep our inmates away from any public contact. They're not allowed to go outside. From when they start the work day, they stay inside. If public comes into the shelter area, they're to be moved to a part of the area where there is no public. Now, even so, these people, they have 24/7 to sit around and figure out ways to beat us. And this is not a problem that is only at the shelter, by the way. It's in our litter abatement crews. It's in our garbage collection crews. It's everywhere that inmates work. But yeah, we send down memorandums. I think, and I know what my friend Benita is talking about. She wants a handbook of policies. We've certainly got a lot of policies floating around. Sure. We've never put it in an organized handbook. And
okay. That's good. Thank you for that answer. 2 comments. I'm assuming that the inmates are being used due to the lack of funding that the county has as general labor to help out cleaning stalls, feeding the animals, so on and so forth.
That's correct. They do general labor at the animal shelter. Generally, we use down there women.
Okay. Let me ask you another question regarding this policy issue. When an animal comes to the shelter, is there a specific policy that each and every employee needs to handle regarding how that animal is cared for, how that animal is fed? Is there an exercise program? Is there a spaying and neutering program? Is there a health care program? Is there a euthanizing program? At what point? I mean, or does somebody just come in and say that dog is sick, we need to euthanize it, or it's not eating, we need to euthanize it, or there's too many here, let's kill them all?
Well, yeah, we have policies. It's not as willy-nilly as maybe you've been led to believe. Now, our director's here, and I know you wanted 1 speaker per group, but she could address that a whole lot better than I could. I'm down there occasionally. She's been down there every day practically for the last couple of years. There are specific intake policies. There's certain information you get. There are statistics that are kept. One of our weaknesses is because of a lack of personnel. Our director is not a person who sits in an office, Jeff. I wish that she were. Keeping up with statistics, formulating policies and handbooks and so forth. Our director is back there in the runs and in the kennels, washing those floors down that stink so bad. If you don't twice a day at least get to them and wash them. So again, it's a personnel problem to a great extent. But I will admit that one of the weaknesses of the shelter, and I talked to our director about that just a few days ago. She wasn't very happy with me, as she smiles now, but it was about keeping up to date with statistics. And I'll give you an example. The Humane Society, before they flew mad and went to the press, wanted some statistics for this year. We should have those up to date. And Brandon Roberts, who's here, works in the judge's office, is in the process of developing a spreadsheet for computers. You can see I've got them here by hand, Jeff.
Hand done, sure.
And we should have that we input each day. And I know the Humane Society was trying to get those. I was trying to get them out of Christian, and it took me about 2 or 3 weeks and a thread over her job, but she got them to me. Okay. That shouldn't be.
All right, thank you. And I have one quick question regarding the policy. Is the policy an open record policy for people who are private citizens? If they wanted to come and get a copy of that, would that be something that the court would release to any private citizen?
Jeff, I think you probably know that just about anything we've got is an open record. If I guess the size of my underwear would be an open record. I don't know.
34. Benita has a comment and a question.
As far as statistics, the statistics we wanted were for 2011. The previous years to that, some of our members were instrumental in assisting shelter management and putting together the statistics from those previous years. 2011, we weren't involved in that, and I think, well, we haven't seen them yet. I'm glad that you have them now. But there's no way of knowing how much money you need to run a shelter if you don't know how many animals you have coming in every week, every month, every year. It varies, from January to July. And believe me, those numbers are important in working out a budget. I also know that by past experience, the director isn't really involved in the budget. And if she doesn't know what she has to spend, how can she do what she's supposed to do with it? I think the budget's been lowered from previous years, and I think part of the reason is because money went unspent. But you can't spend the money if you don't know what you've got.
Thank you, Benito. What I'm hearing on both sides of the argument. Go ahead, Judge.
I need to respond to that.
Please do.
And much of what Benita says is true, and I don't disagree with. We agree on a whole lot more than we disagree about. However, let me say this. After these statistics were requested, she said she hadn't seen them until tonight. They've been laying on my desk waiting to be picked up by the very people who requested them for a number of weeks. Now, they haven't been down to the shelter. No volunteer has appeared there to give them to. And I think it's important, since we're getting our director beat up a little bit, that I have to step up for her. She's sitting here taking it like a man, although she's a woman. I've got to say, she is in that position because Benita's organization, the Humane Society, Benita included, recommended her to us. We listen to people who make recommendations. We listen to Benita. We listen to Cindy May. We listen to others out in the public. We don't act in a vacuum. And that, if I may, Jeff, I'd like for Roland Case just to address what we have done with regard to directors back over the years. Roland, you can do that in a minute or two. But I think it's important to understand just exactly what we try to do, Jeff, in working with people in the community who love animals.
Okay. I can't give specific names, but I go back to the Karen Gibson administration, and basically every administration has followed the recommendation of the Humane Society as to hiring the director, with one exception. And I can give you the one exception. Having said that, every administration, the Humane Society has wanted the setting director fired, either directly or indirectly, sometimes just by a member of the Humane Society rather than them doing it as a group. Every administration since the Karen Gibson administration, and I can't say about before, has solicited and offered and begged the Humane Society to manage the animal shelter. And they still won't. And I think that offer would still be on the table. And that offer would be on the table, and I'm being somewhat facetious, if the Appalachian News Express wanted to take over the management of the animal shelter. I think we'd be glad to make arrangements with the News Express. As a matter of fact, when Jim Patton stepped up to the plate and offered to take over the golf course management, I said, Jim, don't you love dogs too? We've got an animal shelter we'd like for you to manage too. And he said, no, my wife would run me out of the house. But that's all I've got. Oh, and the other thing I would say, as far as policies and procedures, I know nothing about that, but I do know that, and I think it was when Rodney King was director, we adopted the ordinance recommended by the Humane Society for our animal control ordinance, which I think was modeled after Kenton County. But it was word for word the ordinance which the Humane Society wanted us to adopt. So it's not like we have turned our head and shut our ears and not listened to the Humane Society. I think that we have over the years.
Thank you, Roland. I'm hearing from both sides and all interested parties, the recurring theme is the care is obviously the case in point and the focal point of what we're trying to accomplish within the organization or the shelter. There's entirely too many animals that are being brought there on a monthly basis. There's not enough funding. There's not enough people. The fiscal court has to either appoint a certified or contract certified organization to run it, or they have to appoint a manager or director to run it.
Jeff, let me just follow up on what Roland said and what you just commented on. And Benita can correct me if I'm wrong. Her memory's probably a whole lot better than my old memory, Jeff. But maybe 4 months ago, Roland, we met with representatives. Benita was there, representatives of the board of the Humane Society. We said, you take it. You run it. You're not happy with the way we're doing it. You run it. Here's our budget. We opened our books entirely. You may have every penny that we budget for that purpose. They turned us down. Matter of fact, they didn't even report back.
Hold on 1 second. Go ahead, Benita. Can you follow up on that, please?
Yes, I think at that meeting it was decided that we needed more information because the budget was kind of clumpy, you know. It didn't break down into what things were. Well, we needed more information, and it was agreed that we would meet again when that information was available. And I've asked for those when you were asking about those statistics. I'd asked for them many times, and I didn't know that it was laying on your desk.
Well, but the word that came back to me, Benita, and I don't doubt what you say. You've always been honest with me, but the word came back to me that you all just weren't interested, and so that's where we are. I have the budget right here. It's not that complicated.
Can you go to the podium, please? Thank you.
Who told you we weren't interested?
I do not recall.
But now at the meeting for you to ask us to take it over, we asked for more information, and you said that you would get back with us when you got that information because we have to know how much the county was going to give towards the animal shelter in order to run it.
Our books are open to you anytime you want to go up there and look at them.
Yes.
Give us reasonable notice, and we'll spread them out before you and let you examine the budget. That's a public document
Then why didn't you?
that you or anybody in this room is entitled to see. And in fact, I brought budget appropriations, and this is for the fiscal year 2012, 2013, and they're on one page.
Mr. Hayes, then why didn't you take us in there and show us right then?
I'm not going to respond to your questions, ma'am.
Excuse me. First of all, can you state your name and who you're with, please?
Libby Carty with the Humane Society.
Okay. Going back to the situation, the fiscal court is in a position where if they offer an opportunity for somebody to step up to the plate and take it, whether it's the ASPCA, the Diamonds in the Rough, the Humane Society, the Appalachian News Express, and if the Appalachian News Express or the Humane Society has a vested interest in that, it would give me the implication that the fiscal court is saying, okay, we are going to allow you to offer any advice you want, and if you're interested in doing that, you may do your due diligence on this project and come and take a look at what you've got, observe the shelter, and if it's something that you all are interested in doing, then you would do that based upon and you have to contract with a legitimate organization. Is that correct?
Yeah, it'd have to be a legitimate organization. We could certainly consider the Humane Society to be that, ASPCA, and I've made the same offer, by the way, within the last couple of months to Cindy Mae Johnson, and she's nodding in agreement. Any responsible organization, it's like Roland Gay says, we would love to do that. It would be a joyous thing for that to happen, believe me.
Okay. My question now is back to Benita and the Humane Society. If the fiscal court offered that opportunity and extended that olive branch, what is the Humane Society's next step to take? It appears as if the Humane Society, obviously based upon your statements, is unhappy with the management, unhappy with the lack of policies, unhappy with the lack of funding, unhappy with a whole bunch of things. And now the fiscal court said, listen, you know what? We're going to give you help. If you want to help us, we're willing to do that, but you've got to take the corrective measures and the corrective steps to help us. What is the next step that the society will take in order to help the shelter, or possibly even remove that part from the fiscal court and take that as its own entity?
Well, we'd have to have the board address the situation and see if we have the means to undertake such a responsibility. But we were in, I guess, we were in talks with the county about it, but it kind of fell apart when we didn't get the response. We were asking for some bills and things, because we really didn't know what the breakdown was, and we're concerned about providing employee benefits commensurate with what the county gives their employees. We didn't know how that could be worked out. So anyway, the discussions failed because they just stopped. But again, I don't know if the board would be willing to take on that responsibility. We were just inquiring because it was certainly something worth looking into.
Okay, thank you. The one question you talked about is that they don't have a policy. I asked the judge, deputy judge, if the policy would be an open document. He said, sure. My question to the Humane Society is, if the policy that is there is an open document, would you all be willing to at least take that document, look at that document, and offer suggestions on how to make that document a better policy so that it can go back to the fiscal court so they could take appropriate action?
Jeff, before you get too hung up on the word, policies can be written or they can be oral.
Sure.
And when you said is there a policy? Sure. There is a policy, for example, on keeping reports. Now, that policy hadn't been abided by some, but there's a policy as to how you deal with everyone who comes in. And one more brief response I want to say is that, we talked in terms of one group taking it over, and the 800-pound gorilla in the room that nobody wants to really talk about is we've had these groups who sometimes, for whatever reason, I'm not going to point the finger at anybody, they don't get along, Jeff.
Sure.
And we're all supposed to be here for the good of the tonight. The issue is the welfare of animals, and people get mad at me. People get mad at the shelter. They start not showing up to volunteer. It's a tough thing. One group wants to have a spayed and neutered clinic at the shelter. The other group calls up and says, well, what are they doing having that down there? And I said, well, isn't that what we're all supposed to be about? Isn't that something worthwhile? And sure it is. We're all supposed to be for spaying and neutering. We ought to work hand in glove with one another on that, whoever's doing it, whatever organization is doing it. Not fight with each other over who's getting what publicity out of what. It's just for the animals. It's not about me, not about Christian Henshaws, not about Bonita. It's not about anything but the dogs and the cats and the animals of this county. They're the poor. I go down there and it breaks my heart. One of the things I've started doing is I'm taking more of my time, leaving here, this office here, my many duties here, and spending time down there. We're making some changes as a result, Bonita, of what you contacted us about. For example, we're getting our camera system up and running that was installed when the shelter was built. For some reason, they've been running. Our door locks have not been secure. Too many keys are out there. So it's on and on and on. It's a daily process, but it's not for anything that I can get anything out of. It's for those little animals. I walked through there and I see a garage full of kittens. There's not enough room for those animals. Cats and kittens, they're beautiful. Not enough people to take care of them. Not any volunteers down there Thursday and Friday. On Thursday, that animal shelter, what was it, got 40 animals in on Thursday alone.
Thank you. Benita, if you go back to my original question, which I'll restate again, the policy that they have, the written policy, is open, and would that be something you all would be interested in looking at to helping create a policy that is adequate for the proper care of the animals that can be returned back to the fiscal court for review?
Jeff, this is something I've been talking about for years, and I've been suggesting for years that maybe there should be an advisory board. I know an advisory board just does that. It advises. But this board could take what exists now, policy and procedures, and add to it and make it something really solid. I've suggested that a few times. I think I've given it to many people, but the suggestion has never really gone any further than that. Because then the manager could have something, a guideline to work with, so the manager knows exactly what their job is, instead of fighting fires, and dealing with complaints, but just having procedures that the manager is required to make sure happen, making sure that cleaning is done in the proper way every day, making sure that, all the animals are dealt with correctly, making sure that there's documentation of all the animals and so forth. And by the way, we put a computer program into the computers that came with the shelter that they could document those dogs and cats as soon as they come in, get pictures of them, get them put up on Pet Finder as soon as they're available for adoption. All that stuff was put in place when the shelter was opened, but I don't think it's ever been used.
Okay. My point there is, in my opinion, as the person who has kind of brought this together, I think the Humane Society, if they have an opportunity to review the policies, they may want to make recommendations to the fiscal court. My next comment is
Jeff,
that
let me follow up on that. I'm sorry, but
it's okay.
What did I write right there? I had that before I came. I had that before I came in here. And Benita, it is true that when one of our first meetings that was discussed, like a lot of things that get discussed, it never got off the ground. Part of the reason was nobody could ever agree as to who would make up the advisory board. Jeff, I have been giving thought in anticipation of this event as to what we could do. It didn't cost any dollars in light of our budget problem, and certainly I agree with Benita, the advisory board is a good idea. As I said before, a lot of these folks have a whole lot better ideas than I'll ever have. I don't care what organization they're with. But I thought, we can make this thing up. We could take, and I didn't realize there was a third organization now.
Diamonds in the Rough.
Diamonds in the Rough, I'm sorry. I understand that's a fairly new organization, but when not realizing that, I said, well, maybe we could take two people designated by the Humane Society, 2 people designated by the SPCA, 2 veterinarians, and 1 county person, me, in an advisory capacity only. And we might be able to do a lot of good work if we do that. Now, I realize I don't have a so-called citizen representative there. I don't have a pet store owner. I'm trying to think of people who would have some vested interest in seeing that our animals are well provided for at the shelter. But that was just Benita my thinking, and you come up with the membership, and I don't see an advisory board can be a great thing. But all parties who should have input must have input on that advisory board.
Exactly. One of the unique comments that I've wrote down, or one of the things that I wrote down, is that, the county is in a unique position. There are 4 entities involved here: the shelter, the Humane Society, Diamonds in the Rough, the ASPCA. Every one of these folks have the animals' well-being at their best heart. However, it seems as if we have 4 entities going in 4 different directions, and they all, it's like they all are doing good, but they're doing good on their own. And I think having an advisory board on here where we have, if the ASPCA has an adoption program on a Saturday with I had the Bark in the Park, why wouldn't Diamonds in the Rough, why wouldn't the Humane Society, why wouldn't the Animal Shelter, why wouldn't the News Express and the Mike's Critter Castle want to be involved with that? And why wouldn't we promote it and have people doing spay and neutering clinics and so on and so forth? The whole thing is about educating to decrease the amount of animals who are being euthanized in this community.
Amen.
Take the pressure off of the director so that the director has a fighting chance, give the opportunity back to the fiscal court so the fiscal court can figure out how to give the director the better tools, and maybe have a policy written up through this advisory board so that when an animal does come in, every employee at that shelter knows, okay, wash it, cut it, groom it, see if it's been spayed and neutered. Is it aggressive? This is where it goes. Now, every day we come in, we got to feed them, we got to bathe them, we got to walk them, we got to do whatever we got to do with them in 25 to 72 days, whatever that magical number is. If it's not adopted, put it on the adoption program, go through the News Express. I know East Kentucky Broadcasting has an aggressive adoption program. The TV stations do. All the entities in here are trying their best to adopt all the animals. I think part of that advisory board could be a media sponsor to help with the adoption, because if we get them in good quality homes, I think that's where we can do that. And when we have situations where the director has that pressure taken off of her, so she can record the animals properly and so on, I think that would be a great thing. And I think an advisory board under your tutelage and leadership, with the Humane, the ASPCA, the Diamonds in the Rough, Roland Case heading it up over there and all that stuff, I think that would be a great opportunity.
It is, but I want to say one thing. You keep saying, oh, they got to do all this for these animals. Now, understand, Jeff, there are 5 people down there, and how many animals would you say right now, Christian, altogether? 400 to 500? Without volunteers, Jeff, it would be impossible to do everything that you just suggested with 5 people. It just can't be done. There's no way you get 500 animals, and it should be done. They need to be out of their cages to be socialized if they're going to be fit for adoption. Or another matter you've not mentioned is rescue. That's sending the animals away from here for adoption. But it's the same thing, basically. That many animals to clean, to feed, to work the front desk with traffic coming in, to send one of the 5 out on the road to bring in animals. And we not only bring them in, Jeff, out of the county, we also take animals. We don't pick them up within the city limits of the city of Pikeville, but we take those animals. The city has an officer, but they don't have any place to take them except to the county shelter. We also take Elkhorn cities, and we take the city of Coal Run Village.
Right.
And that's just, look, what you said would be ideal. It would be wonderful. It would be great. But all the people who are so concerned and who complain, I have found, and I'm not talking about anybody in this room, please don't take it personal, it's hard to get volunteers. And it's like I was told by a lady I respect so very much, oh, John, we're professional people. We've got jobs we have to do. How can they leave that and go to the animal shelter? I know we had some of the representatives of the youth here, and hallelujah, I'm proud to see them here. But I urged them and begged them and pleaded with them, get down there and volunteer.
That's exactly right.
I just don't see that volunteerism.
Well, I think part of that stuff, if you have a comment, let me go ahead to the thing. I think part of that information, part of those mechanics of getting more volunteers, with the University of Pikeville having, almost tripling its enrollment, you got the Pike County youth leadership group involved here. You've got the Rotary RILAS program involved. There's so many different entities with so many different, there's 10,000 students in Pike County, surely, and you got 4 different entities. Even if they take one day where the Humane Society goes and volunteers 3 people every Monday and does that on a rotating schedule, that could be something the advisory board can do. All right, I'd like to open this up to public comment right now. Libby, please state your name. If you have a comment, state your name, who you represent, or if you're just private citizen.
With the Humane Society. Just like the Appalachian, we have great rescues. They foster, and we have a rescue that had been coming in here once a month to get animals. And for whatever reason, they are no longer coming. But now she is willing to start coming every month and taking 60 to 70 animals every month. We also have a lady that takes pregnant dogs or mom with pup dogs. And that communication is not being related to the person that will take these. I mean, if Mr. Hayes is willing, we can start getting these rescues back in here. But for whatever reason, they have not been coming in here.
Thank you. I think that would fall back on that advisory board. I mean, that would be a good thing. And once a month or wherever, when this board meets, they can bring this information. If you've got a rescue entity that wants to come and adopt 60 animals or something, I think it's a travesty if it's not taken care of, particularly when there's an opportunity there. Thank you.
We're certainly willing, Libby, and I want you, hey, Jeff, let me add a little levity. They said Thursday evening our animal shelter was broken into. The only thing we could find missing was 2 dogs, and I said maybe we ought to advertise and leave it open every night.
My name is Dakota Lester. I'm the president of the Pike County Youth Leadership Council. My comments for Mr. Hayes. You talked to us last year a lot about volunteering and things, and part of the reason why we couldn't come volunteer is because we're a completely student-governed council, and the animal shelter was not open on weekends, so all the kids are in school during the shelter hours. So, hold on one second.
Let me correct you just right there. Okay. The animal shelter is the only department in county government that is open on the weekends, open on Saturdays.
Now it is. It used to
It's
not
been
be
open
on
since
Saturdays.
for how long? 2 years?
And also, you would not allow people under the age of 18, and you changed that policy recently.
Okay, well, we're not going to debate, but it is open on Saturdays.
Yes.
We did that as a way to improve the operation of the shelter, enable the public to have an opportunity, those people who worked 5 days a week, to be able to come to the shelter on Saturday, look at the animals and adopt them. But that's been in effect 2 years, I know.
Yes.
You are right about our age limitation, and I realize that was a problem for you guys. So we were able to back that up, I believe. The director's over there, maybe with parental consent, I'm not sure.
Yes,
okay?
that's the thing that was cleared up. I'm well aware it's open on Saturdays because as soon as that policy was fixed, we went for 2 months. I'm sure it was at least a good 2 months, and every Saturday we had students there from our council volunteering. So we did volunteer quite a bit. And something I noticed is with having 7 or 8 kids there plus the staffers, it was near impossible to get everything done just for the dogs, not even going towards the cats. There's so much work involved with that shelter that needs to be done every day. I feel like understaffing is one of the biggest problems they have. We as kids, and we got some pretty peppy kids on our council, and it was really tough for us to be able to wash the dogs, walk the dogs, clean the cages, feed and water all of them. And it's just a really tough thing, and I just wanted to put it out there that we have volunteered, and we did take your advice whenever you told us about volunteering, and once the age limit was fixed, I feel like that's a really good thing that happened there.
Well, that was well spoken, and I apologize for painting with too broad a brush.
Thank you, Dakota.
Hi, there's a couple things I'd like to speak on.
Your name, please.
My name is Carrie Childers.
Okay.
I live exactly next door to the Pike County Animal Shelter. And on the first behalf of volunteers, I volunteered there for a year now. And there is definitely not enough help, and there is no possible way that you could bath, groom, cut the toenails, and do all this. You could do so many, but that is it. There is nowhere near enough. I bring my kids over there every day since the parental consent come in. They volunteer, they walk dogs, they play with the cats, they feed them, they give them treats, they do all this. If we could get more people to do that, it would be wonderful. Amen. And on the second behalf of like the rescue situation, I myself have contact rescues for different animals, especially for like when we had the dogs from the the dog raid. We had those. I contacted rescues to help get them homes. I'm still in contact with those rescues and keep in contact in case we ever need them.
Thank you for your help. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
My name is Sandra Childers. I live right next. The animal shelter property joins my property. And as the animal shelter probably knows, Humane Society, I fought tooth and toenail to keep them from there because I didn't want them in our neighborhood. But you talked about getting a forum. You need people of that neighborhood to come in there and help with a forum too, because they know what's going on. Just like the other night, there was somebody dropped off 5 little puppies at my house. I have 5 puppies that I'm fostering. I have 1 dog. I have 2 cats. I have had multitude of dogs that I have fostered to keep from taking them to the animal shelter. I find them homes. People can help if they will. Now, this bickering between all of the societies, between the county court, it's doing nothing but killing dogs and killing cats. That's all it's doing. If they say that we're loving people, well, if we are, let's open our hearts and open our wallets. You said you take dogs from Coal Run, you take dogs from the city, you take dogs from Elkhorn City. Okay, make them pay a little bit. They don't have to pay much, but make them pay a little bit. They can afford a little bit. They can afford $100, $200 a month for the dogs, for the care that their animals are getting. Because if they had to build a shelter, they'd have to pay it. And don't tell me that they don't have it, because I know they do.
Yeah, let me be fair to the city of Pikeville, ma'am, and that's a good point, and I appreciate the point you made before I address the city of Pikeville. That one point that you made, and we've discussed this time and again, if the people of this county would take a little responsibility on occasion, those who are able, those who can, and not just haul off and bring dogs to the shelter and dust their hands off and say, now there's somebody else's problem. Yeah, they're our collective problem, the people's problem. You know, I remember when I had a cat, and we didn't know much about spade and neutering when I grew up in the Mare Creek down in the 50s, but, you know, if it had a litter, or whatever you call it, a bunch of kittens, we went out in the neighborhood and we found homes for those kittens. What's happened to people's collective drive to help themselves? Government's not the answer to everything. The city of Pikeville, Jeff, and we have to be fair to them. We addressed that at the old shelter. They let us use that rent free, and I don't even believe we paid the utilities there. Did we, Benita? Did we pay the utilities? Well, anyway, they let us use that building. When we moved down to the one provided by the Humane Society in the summer of 2010, I contacted the people in the city, and I said, now look, in order to be fair, you need to now contribute something. And they agreed. Donovan readily agreed. And I think they gave us the first year, I can't remember, it's Roland, you may remember, $20,000 or $15,000. But what we did, we took, in our statistics, we keep the number of animals that come in from the city and from Elkhorn and from all the incorporated areas in Pike County. And so we took the percentage of animals as a whole versus their percentage and took our budget and said, all right, this is what you owe. And they were glad to pay it. I think we're working out a deal now. I'm not sure if the sewage is up there yet, the water and so forth, but where they're going to provide all that, and that's going to be their share. So they are contributing. I want to be fair to them.
Thank you. Comment, please.
My name's Chris Nanshu. I'm the acting director, and I just want to clarify that the first one of the things that I've changed is volunteers. I want to 12 and up, as parental consent. They can stay there as long as they're responsible. We can't babysit or anything. They've got to listen to us and show responsibility, because I want to hit the little ones, because that's our future. I want to hit them and get them to know about abuse and let them see a little bit. But As far as the euthanasia, the numbers, they'll never go down until we have a mandatory spay and neuter law. And I think everybody agrees to that. But as far as me euthanizing to make the numbers go up, I don't put a date and time on anything. I know that I probably should, only because I did have a hound there that had been there since November. I won't keep him for a long time and then euthanize something good coming in. We evaluate everything. And as far as rescues, I have worked with rescues. I've got a whole book sitting over here of rescues I've contacted. They've sent me their information that I need. I've checked them out. They checked out good. But you can't force a rescue to take an animal. Every state's getting full, and you can't force them. And as far as the one that's been mentioned that I'm supposedly not working with, there's a lady over at Phelps that fosters animals, and this rescue that's being talked about, they take her animals first before the shelter animals. And that is a problem to me because I think they're safe, shelter animals aren't. So, we need to work on that also.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any more public comments?
I have one other thing to say. The other thing that I think that would help a whole lot in the animals being thrown out, and especially me getting them. I don't know why, but my house seems to be a magnet for the animals. I have cats and dogs, and I think if there goes a horse out, I'd end up with them. But if they would get somebody there at night to stay, somebody needs to be there. I don't know if the people that I have said the animal shelter closes at 4 or 5 o'clock, whatever it closes in the evening.
Right.
If they could stay open later
Sure.
in the evening, it would help. People would come in, because I don't know if people have come in to get animals, and they could not get the animals because the animal shelter was closed. And they need somebody there that can either adopt the animals out or can take the animals in.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Cindy?
I'm Cindy Mae Johnson. I'm with the Appalachian SPCA. John Doug, when you said there's an elephant in the room that nobody's talking about, I thought you were going to refer to the fact that animals are dying at the shelter, and that has now been brought up. That, to me, is the largest elephant we should be talking about. It's the fact that healthy, adoptable pets end up being killed for lack of space. And we can talk all day long about that problem on the front end. There are things that need to be done to change it. But there's also some fundamental, basic differences of opinion here. And nobody seems to want to talk about that, and that's whether that is an appropriate way to deal with the problem. The Appalachian SPCA feels it is not appropriate to kill an animal because your shelter is very full. There are other options. We have volunteers who spent their Thanksgiving Day at the shelter. I personally spent my Mother's Day at the shelter. We do have volunteers going on days off and when they can be there. We also took, I'm hearing misinformation. You talk about rescues not being in there. We personally, our organization, helped send about 30 animals to rescue this month alone. So rescues are taking animals out of the shelter. But what's so important is what Kristen referred to, and that's up on the front end, getting animals spayed and neutered. 200 animals were spayed and neutered free of cost to the public about a year ago through our efforts. This last clinic we did, 85 animals were spayed and neutered. We took every male kitten in the shelter and neutered it so that it could be released to any owner without any fear that it was going to reproduce. Those are the efforts that will make a difference. That's the elephant in the room. Do you think because a kennel has 4 dogs in it and they're crowded and they're pooping and nobody's scooping it, that you should kill one? I get emotional about this because I don't think you should. There are other options. That's what our organization believes in. That's what we're working so hard to change. And when you said an elephant in the room was any bickering between organizations, frankly, I'm not a part of that, and I don't believe our organization is a part of that. We got one singular focus. We want to save lives. We do not want animals to be killed. And I've got to give Kristen a huge commendation in that she has worked tirelessly with us. Kristen will call us and say, I've had a dog brought into the shelter whose leg is broken and hanging loose. We have no money here at the shelter to fix this dog. I'll have to put it down. We've been able to raise the money, go get the dog, fix its leg, and find it a home. That's what we do. So even animals who are sick or injured have an opportunity to live. If our organization, which is fairly small and very young, we're only 3 years old, can make that kind of an impact, and Kristen has shared with me, since we started helping with the Adopt-A-Pet show, since we started taking animals out to rescue, started providing vet care, we have seen fewer animals being euthanized. It's not changing the numbers coming in yet, but it will. And that's what everybody needs to be working toward. We issued a statement some time ago that we don't understand why there's any controversy here. And all we can fathom is that in a society as advanced as we are, as good a job as we do here in Pike County, why we can't do a better job of seeing that we do educate people and we do make laws, but it's not government's problem, it's the people's problem, and the people are the people who are supposed to care about the animals. That's all we ask, is that people care and don't condemn animals to die because you think they're overcrowded. When you get angry that too many animals come in the shelter and say we should put some of them down, I'll remind you of the animal hoarding situation that was referred to earlier. We felt it was really important to get those animals spayed and neutered and out to homes, and that happened. They went to rescues and they went to private homes. Other organizations felt they should be euthanized. We do not agree with that. We'll never agree with that, and that's the one thing that we can't work with. That's what I have to say for the Appalachian SPCA.
Thank you for your comments.
You're welcome.
Very well, duly noted.
I agree with everything you said.
Are there any more public comments? John Doug, Benita, and ASPCA, thank you for coming. Diamonds in the Rough, Libby, thank you for your comments. Christian, thank you for your comments. Thank you.
Jeff,
go ahead.
Just very briefly, and this, I made a note of it. I would invite you, any member of the paper staff, any member of the public who may be watching this on Channel 99, I guess we're on, anyone who reads about this in the Appalachian News Express, to come down and visit the animal shelter down on Likens Creek. You will be surprised. You've heard all of this about the animal shelter. You're going to be pleasantly surprised. It's a bright, it's a cheerful place. Despite the number of animals they have, despite the tremendous job in cleaning, you will find it to be a reasonably clean place. Go down and visit, look at the animals, and then form your own judgment about the care. I'd encourage you to send your staff down and not let them know their staff, and let them do a story on what they found down there. I don't think you're going to find anything like has been sometimes betrayed. Yes, and Cindy, I've been here 5 years, and we've been a high-kill shelter for 5 years. It breaks my heart. And if we could do nothing else than just drop one step at a time, down to a moderate, I'd like to be a low. I don't think we'll ever get much away from that, despite what your dreams and aspirations are. Well, I think we can get there, but we've all got to join hands and work together, Jeff. It can be done. Now, spayed and neutered, I don't know what all is required in one of those laws, but nobody's broached that subject tonight. I'm for it, but I'm not even on the court. And I don't speak for Judge Rutherford. This is John Doug Hayes. You all have asked me before, Benita, and I've said I'm for that. There's never been anybody come and in my 5 years, I don't think, and address the court and say, it's time we address reality in this county and have a spayed or neuter law now. In my 5 years.
Well, we can address it, but it was always discouraged from other parties that was impossible in Pike County.
I don't know what the court's reaction is. I'd be afraid to speculate. But look, the court reacts to people. The Congress reacts to people. You're what it's about. But if these two great organizations would just join hands on that one issue and march out of here tonight, think of what a difference you may make to the animals of this county and for those dreams that you've agreed with Cindy on. Thank you, Jeff. I'm sorry.
The Pike County Youth Leadership Council did address the court sometime last year about spay and neuter laws and our initiatives on the animal rights laws here in Pike County. Just to clarify that, we were there at one point.
Well, I apologize, but somebody needs to get up and say we've got an ordinance, and we'd like for the court to consider passing it and pass them around one.
I think Cindy
What was the response to you?
Not very open, I would say, but it's something that needs to be done, and everybody knows these things need to be done. It's just going about, how do we go about setting this up, because we all know it. We need these laws. If anything is going to change, the numbers will not go down at the shelter until we get laws like these.
Thank you. I think Cindy hit a couple of nerves, and thank you for doing that. The main problem that we'd like to do is we'd like to improve the adoption rate while decreasing the kill rate. And I think that can be good not only at the shelter in Pike County, but every other county in the state of Kentucky. And I think that hits the nail right on the head. So thank you for that comment. I also think that the inception of an advisory board to help with that mission statement, which would be to improve adoption rate and decrease the kill rate, would be a huge thing. So anybody who's interested in that, I would gonna make a recommendation to the Judge Hayes to get that advisory board started and have some peaceful, corrective, constructive comments and criticism to have a policy enacted to alleviate some of the issues that the director is feeling, so that the community knows that it's there. We're doing as much education as we possible, but like Cindy said, it's up to the people to care about their own animals. And if they don't care about the animals, then it leaves the care to other entities. And that's why there's so many different entities out there trying to save one life, one animal, to get into the adoption program. So if there are no more comments or open comments, I want to thank you all for coming. I think this has been a very productive meeting. I think sides have been opened up. And I think the pledge to go forward is challenged to the entities to bring that to the fiscal court, and we're going to bring this and hold the fiscal court, give them an opportunity to respond accordingly. Thank you for your time.